It is undoubtedly the biggest game of the season. Welcome back to the United Podcast. It's Larry and I'm joined by Tom. And Tom, this game, it has to be our biggest game of the season for obvious reasons because we're obviously going for our only opportunity at a trophy or another trophy, I should add. But this game takes a whole lot more significance following yesterday's result against Sevilla, doesn't it? And it's a massive game.
Well, you say our biggest game of the season, which it definitely does feel like that. I wouldn't disagree, but I think we've had this discussion about 7 times this season. I think it always comes around the corner. Okay, this is our biggest game of the season. But the reason why I agree this time around, Larry, is simply not for our chance of a sort of second trophy this season, which I'm fully behind. And of course, that is the reason why it is so important. We do need another trophy, or like another trophy, of course. But the main thing on that trophy sort of topic is our Manchester City, and we're talking about, okay, is the title in Arsenal's hands or City's hands? Can Real Madrid maybe stop City winning a Champions League? They're all discussions, but ultimately, the treble is in City's hands. If City win all their games, they're going to win a treble, which we know what that means for Manchester United. Ultimately, we're still in the competition City are in regards to the FA Cup. So stopping the treble is also in our hands. And that is why this is so important because, look, we'll get into match score predictions in a little bit. I think both of us might side on the fence that Brighton are very likely to go through. But ultimately, it is in our hands to get through to the final. And then if we do play City very likely in the final, it is in our hands to stop the treble. And I think that is where so much of this importance does lay.
Spot on, mate. And that's the thing. All this talk about Arsenal, can they win the league? Manchester City, if they win all their games, etc. At the end of the day, Manchester United have an opportunity to stop this treble directly. And that's what you want to see them go in and do. Now, whether they can do that is another debate. But let's get into the FA Cup semi-final and preview ahead. But before we get to United, so many questions to ask, particularly about the defense, given Harry Maguire's performance, doubts hanging over Luke Shaw, Terrell Malacia, etc. So we will get to all of that, and we've got a solution for you. Stay tuned for that. But Tom, before we get there, let's talk about Brighton a little bit. A good team in the Premier League. They're in good form. They haven't lost. Well, their last loss was against Tottenham, but in terms of their last 6 matches, that's their only loss. Other than that, they generally get a good draw or they win. And their results, most recently, they beat Chelsea. Now, I think
they shouldn't have lost to Tottenham. They were robbed by VAR in that game. So they're in unbelievable form, to be fair to them.
Yeah, absolutely. But they've beaten Chelsea, which, I mean, I got to be honest, I think beating Chelsea is pretty straightforward nowadays. But at the end of the day, you can't argue with their form. This is a side that's beat Liverpool on multiple occasions this season and have beaten Manchester United at home this season at Old Trafford. Let's not forget the opening day of the season. So it won't be straightforward, and they do have a lot of good players. Is there anyone in particular from Brighton that worries you or that you think Manchester United need to look out for?
I think it's the case with Brighton over the years, and probably especially this year, even after everyone was saying what's going to happen at Brighton after Graham Potter left, and what a fantastic job he did there. How they're going to sort of survive and sort of continue on that upward trajectory. Ultimately, they've continued, if not even better themselves from last season. And I think it goes back down to it's not about individuals. Yes, you can highlight certain individuals and their strengths, and I'm sure one or two dominate discussions in regards to sort of Manchester United transfer targets, obviously, a little bit, but ultimately it is the collective at Brighton, and there's no hiding from the fact they do have one or two standout players. Obviously, Matoma and McAllister, obviously in very good form, and obviously sort of hotly linked with Manchester United as well. You do look at Evan Ferguson, who I think is potentially out with an injury, which is a good thing, but then ultimately you look at obviously no stranger for Manchester United and Danny Welbeck, and he's been playing quite well lately. So ultimately those are the two names, Matoma and McAllister, do stand out as the type of players over the last decade would cause Manchester United problems. Those tricky sort of number 10 sort of creative players in midfield, sort of Manchester United and our defensive midfielders have struggled to get near. So they're definitely the ones that sort of do catch the eye and are in very good form and ultimately do have a connection in regards to transfer topics as well. So they're the players that do stand out. I'm sure a lot of people do say Caicedo as well. No, I'm not sold on him. I think Basuma was another one at Brighton the other year. Everyone thought Basuma was the next best thing. I didn't really think he was going to take that next step. Caicedo, he might. I don't really see it, but obviously he's a very good player and it's sort of crucial what Brighton do. But I think with Brighton, it's just a collective. There are individuals, but they're just a well-oiled machine.
Yeah, Lewis Dunk. That's a name. That's one of those defenders that you look at and you're like, he's clumsy, he's big, but he seems to give you every time United have versed him in previous years. I'm always cagey about good old Lewis Dunk, but. Nonetheless, you're right, Tom. And they're very much a systems team, and I've got to give some credit to their manager. Is it Roberto De Zerbi? He's taken like a duck to water, hasn't he? I mean, at the end of the day, Graham Potter left, and there was big question marks about how does the manager come in and continue the momentum of Brighton. You could argue he's made them better, and let's not
He
forget
definitely
that
does.
they lost Trossard in the January transfer window, who was a massive player for them and hasn't impacted them in any way whatsoever. So some credit is due, and well done to Brighton and well done to Roberto De Zerbi. This won't be a straightforward game of football. Tom, let's talk about Manchester United now. And let's talk about Brighton's style of play. So before we talk about the starting 11 and what Ten Hag does with the defense, the midfield, and the attack, because let's be honest, there's question marks all over the pitch. Brighton press from the front and Brighton keep the ball and they play positive football. Given what we saw before we get into our player selection, does the way Brighton play, particularly if you think back to that opening game of the season in the Premier League, does the way they play worry you at all? And are you looking at Manchester United thinking, how are we actually going to get up the other end to attack Brighton? Because I think it's really interesting. I think it's styles make fights, as they say, and styles make football matches. And Brighton have the potential to really disrupt United, don't they?
It worries me if we play to our weaknesses and their strengths. That's what worries me. If we have any smarts about us, both from the dugout and the players on the pitch, would avoid those weaknesses and sort of try and exploit Brighton's weaknesses rather than playing towards their strengths. I think ultimately we start playing out from the back, where Brighton are very sort of good in the press in terms of that final third, getting the ball off our back four. And if we keep the ball with our back four, who is very much going to be a makeshift back four, we're going to find some troubles. If we get De Gea, and obviously Harry Maguire's not there, but it's sort of a makeshift back four playing football in and around that defensive third, the more time the ball is there, the more time Brighton are sort of going to be in a comfortable phase of where they want the game to be and where we definitely don't want the game to be. So in my opinion, I don't want to go old school and sort of 1980s English football and sort of pump it long. Oh my God, I'm telling Erik Ten Hag, what was the issue against Brentford, playing out from the back when we lost 4-0? Okay, we got caught out playing out from the back. How did you fix that? Next week against Liverpool, you hit halfway on the full. Now, I know that sounds bad. That goes away from his principles, of course, but I don't care about the principles today. I care about qualifying for an FA Cup final. I don't care about sort of progression and sort of good football, how that leaves us next season in terms of the progression. I need to win this football match, and I think playing to our strengths or playing sort of away from our weaknesses, I should say, is our best bet at winning. Because ultimately, if we do start playing sort of fancy football in and around the back, Brighton will pick us off. And look, we'll get into score predictions in a little bit. I think if Brighton are on the front foot and we're not at it, and we start poorly, I can see this. It sounds crazy when you talk about Manchester United and Brighton, but I could see Brighton hitting 4 or 5 goals. I think if we don't start well, and ultimately we're going to start well if we are on the front foot, and that's at the other end of the pitch with Marcus Rashford, with Anthony, with Bruno Fernandez. I think that's where the game needs to be, not playing sort of fancy triangle. And that's not to disrespect playing out from the back. I do understand that's the way the modern football and Erik Ten Hag wants to go. Of course, not tomorrow, not against Brighton. Okay, do that next year. Okay, today is about winning football matches, and ultimately that's where I do think the game needs to sort of be played in our final third, in our front third, I should say.
So, forgive the presentation for today, Tom, but I really thought it was important to bring up the 11. Casemiro in defense. That's our solution. Now, let me first start with, you've gone with De Gea. You're trusting De Gea to do the job. Is there any suggestion here that the goalkeeper needs to be changed?
You can treat it like a player like any other player. If it's a central midfielder and a poor display, you fully back Erik Ten Hag and see a situation where Erik Ten Hag would change it, of course. The goalkeeper, look, I understand the criticism and frustrations of De Gea at the moment. You're going to put Jack Butland in for his debut in the FA Cup semi-final. You're going to put Tom Heaton in. No, you're not. And it would be the wrong decision to do so, in my opinion. I know Sir Alex had the famous one against Crystal Palace in 1990. But ultimately, I don't see, and I think it would be the wrong decision. I think David De Gea is still our best goalkeeper. There's no doubt about that. Even his haters would sort of begrudgingly agree with that. You play him. If Brighton are going to have shots at goal, you want David De Gea in goal rather than Jack Butland. So there is a situation in regards to treating all players fairly across the pitch. You could see a situation where his performance warrants a drop in. Anywhere else on the pitch, not in goalkeeper, in our current situation.
Talk to me about your midfield. This is where I'm really curious. So you've gone Bruno, Eriksen, and Fred. Please tell me how you're deploying that midfield, because it's a very attacking midfield for a team that just conceded 3 goals.
Yeah, look, it's just a three. Like there in regards to the positions of each player, you'd probably maybe have Fred a little bit deeper in regards to the defensive side of things, but Eriksen maybe a bit deeper in regards to how he attacks. So I'll probably look at a 4-2-3-1 with 2 of them sitting there. You could argue in the current sort of climate, Bruno Fernandez is one of the players who sits in regards to the way he gets on the ball. Ultimately, I don't really care who sits where. You could even have Fred as more an attacking sort of someone in the press in the final third. You could have Fred in the number 10 and Bruno Fernandez and Christian Eriksen a little bit deeper. I guess you could throw Sabitzer over Christian Eriksen in regards to someone who's maybe a little bit more likely to put a tackle in, of course. But I think Sabitzer had a poor game. That's not to say Christian Eriksen had a good game. Far from it. But I think you have to pick one of them. One of them's going to have to be on the bench. And this is obviously assuming Casemiro is going to be at the back. Let's throw a hypothetical where Tyrell Malacia is fit and available. I think Malacia comes in at left back. Luke Shaw comes in to partner Victor Lindelof. And then you can obviously throw Casemiro back into midfield, and that changes the shape, of course. But that's what I'll be going at the moment if Casemiro is going to play at the back. Now, yes, it turns a little bit lightweight defensively. If Brighton sort of are quick in the transition, it might be very hard for midfield to sort of get back. This is where, again, you'd probably want Fred and McTominay sort of to provide a little bit of cover and a few legs. That's not going to happen. McTominay's still out injured. Fred should be available. I think Fred will start regardless. It's a big pitch in regards to the way our midfield was quite laboured in Sevilla. We definitely need a little bit of energy. But how would you line up that midfield three, assuming it was that personnel? I don't think for me, there's no real wrong answer in regards to, as long as 2 are sitting and one's at number 10, I think that's you could rotate from there.
Yeah, I think the biggest concern with Brighton is they will press from the front. And so for that reason, I think you need to find a way or get someone who can play football from the back. Given Dalot and Wan-Bissaka are both fit, I think he might actually put Luke Shaw at centre back, and I think he'll stick with Lindelof as the right-sided centre back. I don't think he will go Casemiro. I mean, when I was talking to you yesterday, I was convinced it would be Casemiro, but I think United's midfield has been such a strength this season, and I wonder, are we almost weakening one position to strengthen another? I think Luke Shaw's probably the most natural replacement for what Lisandro Martinez does. Not as aggressive, not as tenacious, won't put his feet in areas that Martinez would. But he absolutely, in terms of United with the ball, I think he absolutely can do a similar job. He's good technical footballer, Luke Shaw. Maybe a component of his game that's not really spoken about. But I think if assuming it's Dalot and Wan-Bissaka are fit, let's assume Malacia is still out. I think that's his only true option. And I think he will go with Casemiro at the base. And Bruno comes straight back in. That's stock standard. I'd actually be dropping Eriksen. I think he looked really laboured.
Sabitzer or Eriksen for me, 50-50. I'll go Eriksen if someone wants to play Sabitzer over him. Yeah, definitely. I don't see. Hard to argue with that.
Well, Sabitzer just didn't get any service, and I think the way he's playing is almost as a second striker. I wouldn't even say he's almost forming part of the midfield base. And for that reason, I'm like, okay, United had no ball against Sevilla, no quality ball, at least. And I think you just need to go for legs. Tell you what, if McTominay was fit, if he'd be the first name in my midfield, I've got to be honest, which I know sounds crazy coming from me, given things I've said this season, but first name on the team sheet. Fred doesn't feel me. Brighton just know they're such a good systems team. Fred's another vulnerability in the heart of the midfield. He's another player that I'd be pressing the hell out of.
I go back to Erik. Look, I agree with this. Where I go to Erik Ten Hag and say, don't play in that area of the pitch. I understand you want to play good football and set traps and sort of allow to sort of bypass that press, sort of attract them in and sort of play through it. Ultimately, over 90 minutes, so when you're playing to someone's strength, I think you're sort of playing with fire. So that is where I do share those sort of feelings about Fred in regards to, okay, maybe Brighton are the team to sort of pick him apart in terms of that when they're playing out from the back. Well, avoid that. Play it long to Weghorst. Now, is Weghorst going to win headers against Lewis Dunk? Probably not. He's probably not going to win headers against Juan Mata. I haven't seen Weghorst win a 50-50 at the moment. I haven't seen him win one. But ultimately, you go back to Wembley, one of Weghorst's best, I'm not sure where Larry is. Hopefully he comes back in a little bit. One of Weghorst's best appearances, in my opinion, for Manchester United was the Carling Cup. I say Carling Cup final was the Carabao Cup final against Newcastle at Wembley. I think he sort of played quite a good sort of partnership with Marcus Rashford in that forward role. It was the assist. Marcus Rashford brought the ball down off a goal kick where we did go long from memory. I don't know if it was a goal kick or a long ball out from the back, but the ball came forward. Marcus Rashford and Weghorst brought it down, set Weghorst through, And Weghorst sort of went for a little bit of a run towards the Newcastle back four and played Marcus Rashford through. Marcus Rashford obviously with the goal and a neat finish by Marcus Rashford. So that's not saying Weghorst, probably his biggest critic, Weghorst is the answer up front, far from it. But if Anthony Martial's injured, which definitely does look like that's going to be the case, you're probably going to have to play Weghorst. And I think ultimately one of his best performers did come at Wembley, so hopefully that is a good omen. Now, Larry just sent us a message there. I'll see if he is back. He has to do it. He can hear me, so he's back here now with us. So what I was just saying, Larry, in regards to Weghorst, look, it's a necessity at the moment. Anthony Martial's not going to be available, we don't think. His best appearance, and not his best appearance, but the most impactful for me in terms of visual, was his assist at Wembley. And that is where I do say, get the ball long to him. Now, he's going to have to do better to win things and sort of deal with things up there against, obviously, a big centre-back in Lewis Dunk. But ultimately, that's where I want the game, so where he can get it and sort of feed Marcus Rashford rather than Victor Lindelof feeding Fred on the edge of our box. I'd rather Weghorst feed Marcus Rashford at the end of their box.
Yeah, no, that's a really valid point. And let me ask you that. Are you picking Weghorst assuming Martial's out? Let's assume Martial's fit. Does that change your selection?
My main selection in regards to Weghorst is dropping Jadon Sancho. That's probably my main inclusion of Weghorst.
How bad was he? I honestly, Tom, I swear to you, it's 24 hours has passed since the game.
It feels worse.
It does feel worse.
Performance.
Yeah, my feelings about Sancho I feel like his United career is done. I think you and I have both been a very much no, I think he'll be here next season and he'll get another shot. I just
can't sell him.
I don't know. I think we might.
No. I mean, physically, you can't. How are you going to offload him? Who's going to buy him and pay him wages? You can't sell him.
Well, that's the thing. I think he'd take a pay cut, but I could see Sancho. I get the vibe that, and again, I could be wrong here. I don't know this for sure, but I get the vibe that he's not loving his time at the moment. Besides
Chelsea, then someone is stumping up a transfer fee and paying wages that he finds acceptable.
Well, United would have to take a cut for him. I think you can still sell him for 40 to 50 million. And
you'll need a big finish to the season.
It could be a loan. It could be a loan, mate. It could be he goes on loan to an Aston Villa. He stays in the top half of the Premier League. I think he absolutely stays in England. But I'm actually starting to think that might be the best thing for him. I can't just where he's at the moment. It's not an ability thing. The ability's there, but he just in his head. He looks in his own head. I don't know what it is. It doesn't look like it's going to happen for him. And I hope I'm wrong, but. And I think United fans are right to be losing patience. To be honest, I think at that point of his career, he has to show more. It's been 2 seasons, and he's not. This isn't a 19-year-old. He's nearly 24. So I think we're right to demand more.
Well, it's crazy the way you asked the question in regards to my inclusion of Weghorst, and sad. Obviously, Anthony Martial's injury does play a part. Of course, it does. But if not, or maybe I even toyed with the idea, if I don't want to play Weghorst, and this is wrong, I definitely wouldn't do this, but I toyed with it in terms of playing Marcus Rashford through the middle and Anthony Elanga for some legs out on the left. Now, obviously, that's not what you prefer to do, or you could argue, okay, throw Sabitzer in the midfield instead of Bruno Fernandez, play Bruno Fernandez out on the right or left and Anthony on either flank as well. Ultimately, though, I will go Weghorst, and as whatever we think of him, he has contributed to some good results and good football for Manchester United. I think he started 19 games in a row or something, and that was a very good patch of form for Man United. So he has contributed well. So I would be playing Weghorst, but it's not so much Anthony Martial. It's so much Jadon Sancho, in my opinion.
Yeah, I get the vibe Martial won't be out for long. There was some footage of him coming from the Sevilla dressing room. He had a limp, but nothing serious. I mean, he stayed on the bench when he came off, didn't he? He just had an ice pack on the calf. Yeah. So it suggests it wasn't anything serious. But then my question is his heart there? Does he have the desire?
I don't think that's the question. I think the question is, okay, he comes back. What's our next game? Is it Tottenham or Aston Villa? Is he going to make it through 90 minutes there? Is he going to be available for the 2 games after that? You have to say no.
I know he has become unreliable, and it absolutely is a headache for Erik Ten Hag. Yeah, it is. We got Tottenham Friday morning our time or Thursday night UK. The games don't stop thick and fast. Tom, who's United's key player? If United are to go through to the semi-final, who are we praising at the end of the game?
There's only 2 names. The one that definitely springs off the back of not having him available against Sevilla is obviously Bruno Fernandez, and what he brings, the difference he does make to the team. Ultimately, in regards to that big pitch at Wembley, you can see if we are to have joy, you can see it being through Marcus Rashford. you'd see him having a good sort of say on the game. But ultimately, I don't think Marcus Rashford gets into the game without Bruno Fernandez having a good one. So ultimately, I think the sort of on and off the pitch, or obviously on the pitch, but mentally and obviously the physical approach to the game, I think Bruno Fernandez will see that if the difference is enough to beat Brighton, maybe it's not. But I think we'll definitely see a difference compared to the Sevilla performance.
Here's a stat for you. Bruno Fernandez didn't concede a single goal against Sevilla over the last 2 legs.
Well, what was that? There was a lot of those stats coming around in regards to when Lisandro Martinez went off or Varane, etc., or Bruno Fernandez and all those subs in terms of, 2-0 up after that. Sevilla scored 5 unanswered goals against us. 5.
And you know what's amazing? All 5 are so avoidable.
Yeah, well, you could argue we scored 4 of them. And it was just, look, it was a, whatever word you want for it, a calamity, a disaster, a circus, whatever. But that, take away that first 80 minutes against Sevilla, that last 100 minutes in regards to 2 legs. Just beyond woeful when you actually sort of break it down and realise, not that we're top in England, but near the top of the best league in the world. We had some mid-table team from Spain who we already beat, the team coming first in Spain. We beat Real Betis, who are doing very well in Spain. And ultimately you lose 5-0 pretty much. Let's say a game has 10 minutes of injury time. We lost 5-0 to Sevilla. That's hard to get your head around.
Absolutely. Ugh. All right, Tom. In terms of, I'm going to ask you 2 final questions to wrap up this preview. How do United play to beat Brighton? So what are you expecting? How do United actually approach this game? And finally, are United going to go through? What's going to be the result?
How we need to play, or in my opinion, again, this is not throwing back to the sort of Wimbledon sort of crazy gang days, but get the ball forward. I want us to win the toss off the kickoff and put it in one of the pockets, put it in their back, sort of near their corner, and win a throw and just play the game in their half. Okay, they clear the ball, comes out to Casemiro, Eriksen, get on the ball, play some football in the final third. I think we need to start well. We knew after 2 minutes up in that Sevilla game, we knew we were going to lose. We probably didn't know we were going to lose in that fashion, but we knew we weren't going to win. We need to know after 5 minutes, okay, Manchester United here to play. We can't have Brighton sort of on the ball dictating play in that first 5 minutes or picking us off in the back four, playing out from the back, and everyone's like, oh, God, this is going to be a long one. Manchester United need to start well. Whether we do or not, and if we're going to go through, that's another debate. But in terms of the way we need to play on the front foot, and that's in their final third. We can't be sort of trying to play good football today. It's simply not going to happen. Am I confident Manchester United winning? Larry, it's crazy. I don't think we will. I think Brighton will. Just my gut feeling at the moment, I think they're going to beat us quite convincingly, or whether that's on the scoreline or not. I'm not sure, but I think in terms of the way they play and they dominate, I think they will dominate the game. And ultimately, I think if they do dominate, they will win the game. Whether it's going to be 1-0 or 4-0, time will tell. But it's crazy they are starting betting favourites last time I did check in the Australian markets, which is a sign of the times where Brighton are favourites against Manchester United at Wembley. But ultimately, though, we've had these debates so many times over the years when we go into these games, we're done. There's no chance we can win. And they're the games we do win. And it's the games we think, okay, we're actually quite confident going to Anfield this week. Then we lose 7-0. So maybe my sort of hesitancy in going into this game does actually give me a bit of confidence. Maybe Manchester United will turn it around. But as things stand, sadly, I think we're relying on Brighton to stop the treble.
Yeah. And I think they'd have a chance too, if I'm being honest. I'm going to say, I think United will win. I think I've talked myself into it as this preview has been recorded, but I think Bruno's absence hasn't been given enough credit or been spoken about nearly enough. And I think his impact to this football team is immeasurable. And I think he'll come back fresh, well rested. And let's not forget that this is a welcome rest for Bruno, one that he probably has needed and has been forced upon him and Erik Ten Hag. I think Bruno has a big performance, and I think he's absolutely the name we're talking about if United go through.
I've talked about the collective for Brighton and what a strength that is for Brighton in regards to the way they play as a team and as a system. If our individuals, in regards to it's a big moment for Brighton. Okay, Manchester United have been here before, whether we've succeeded or failed, that's another debate, but we've been here before. We've been at Wembley this season, we've won a trophy. If our individuals show up and are on it and play well, okay, yes, it's a team game, but if our individuals, big names like Casemiro, Bruno Fernandez, Marcus Rashford, David De Gea, Victor Lindelof, the players for that spinal team, if they turn up and are switched on, Manchester United win the game. Now, I think we're far better than Brighton. Brighton are playing very well, but there's probably one team that you'd say are probably overachieving a little bit over their station, and you look at Manchester United's wages and names, I think technically it might be even underachieving. So I think if Man United do show up and play well, we'll win. The question is whether we will or not. But I think a big one lays on our individuals and their mindset going into this one. Are they going to be switched on, or are they sort of not quite at the races?
Oh, massive. I'm going to say United win. I think it'll be a 2-1 win. I just got a feeling Bruno and Rashford might turn it on. But that's my hunch. Tom doesn't think we're going through, but it will be an interesting one. Nonetheless, let's leave it there. Tom, fingers crossed. I know we want a United result.
Nothing more. Nothing more. Like, look, I don't fancy a final against Manchester City. I can confirm now I will not be watching that. That'd be the worst thing in the world. But ultimately, we do need it. It's in our hands to stop this treble, and I'd love nothing more than to make an FA Cup final, of course. Manchester United hurt me on Friday morning in Sevilla.
I feel you, mate. I feel you. But if you think United will win the match, make sure to hit a like on the video. And if you are new, hit that subscribe button. We are on our way to 2K and we want to achieve it before May. And I didn't mean for that all to rhyme, but that's just a sign of the times. And now I'm just continuing with it and I'm going to stop. So, Tom, I hope you have a good weekend. To all the patrons, have a great weekend. Fingers crossed. And we'll be back to review, hopefully, Manchester United going to an FA Cup final. But stay tuned for that. Until then, have a great weekend. I will see you soon. Cheers.
See you, mate.